Denis Diderot seems here to be flipping the pages of his encyclopedia, but he was also a major writer on art, really the beginning of modern art criticism. And as an art critic, he is a guide to what mattered about art in the 18th century. So the textbook here in our section 30.5, later 18th century art in France, painting, is describing his achievements with the encyclopedia and goes on to say, in 1759, Diderot began to write reviews of the official Salon for a periodic newsletter for wealthy subscribers. He is generally considered to be the founder of modern art criticism. Note the date, 1759. This is 30 years before the French Revolution. But the writing about art that he's doing in 1759 is the beginning of asking questions about art and voicing expectations for art, that it should actually fulfill political aims, that it should be teaching people about how to be citizens of a virtuous republic. And so they say here, Diderot believed that art should be moralizing, that it should promote virtuous behavior and inspire refined manners. We'll talk about this a little more, but I want to backtrack and talk about the Salon. This is critically important for what's happening with the development of art now and in the century to come. We've already seen how the 17th and 18th centuries brought the establishment of royal academies of painting and sculpture in France, Dresden, London, Boston, and so on. These institutions treated art as an elevated intellectual endeavor. The textbook presents academies and academy exhibitions tucked in its discussion of neoclassicism and early romanticism in Britain, 30.4. I want to focus on this question of the Salon. What started out in 1664 as occasional public presentations of academic artists' work became a major tradition. This exhibition is known as the Salon, as they say. So we've looked at salons, the Salon of Madame Pompadour, the Salon of various aristocrats, but this is a different salon. It is a gathering space, a place for conversation and discussion that is a public place in the Palace of the Louvre. It is a public exhibition that becomes a biennial event with a jury, with prizes awarded, and it becomes a major way in which art is molded, as they say here, to public taste, and in which the public is engaged with art in a way it hadn't been previously. So we certainly saw a painting of patrons admiring paintings and discussing them in a semi-public space, but this is not a truly public space because this is a shop. This is an art gallery. This is a place where paintings are for sale. But the Salon at the Louvre is truly public in that it is a government-sponsored space where the government is presenting art in an official capacity. This is an engraving of the Salon of 1785, and there are actually a lot of interesting things to see here. In terms of public space, you have the sense of people gathering, and we're going to see as the decades go on that this is actually a cross-class space, a space where classes mingle. You also see the convention of what's called salon-style hanging. So at these salons, artworks were not arranged in kind of open white spaces like we think of museums today, just in a row. They were crammed together and they were stacked. And they were stacked according to the hierarchy of genres. So landscapes and flower paintings or still lifes would be on the bottom. There would become portraits above that. And then at the very top would be what is called history paintings. Grand, noble paintings that portray something of urgent meaning and that demonstrate moral virtues. This event, going to the Salon and seeing these paintings, was a big social occasion. You have to remember, this is a world where there are no movies, there are no TVs, there's no Twitter, there's no Instagram. This is the big, exciting entertainment. And these history paintings are comparable to a major movie that deals with grand themes. So Diderot is instrumental in actually codifying, explaining, writing up the hierarchy of genres. It had already existed. We saw it in the world of the Dutch Republic. But Diderot explains why. Why is it that portraiture and history painting are higher? And for him, it really has to do with the edifying value, the teaching value, the inspirational value, we could say. That history painting, if it's done in what he calls the grand manner, is uplifting. It reveals what makes life meaningful and inspires us to become better citizens. So to Diderot, painting, when it's at its most ambitious, is also a part of the intellectual ferment of the Enlightenment, is a form of philosophy. We'll talk later about some of these grand manner history paintings like this one that really speak to what Diderot calls the criteria of virtue. But Diderot is a complex figure, and he thinks very subtly, and he also champions painters like Chardin, whose painting, The Governess, is actually not a grand history painting involving major themes from ancient Rome, but a little anecdote. It's really a kind of genre painting in which a governess is actually very gently scolding the little boy who she is raising up for his messiness, for throwing his toys around. And we're meant to admire the kind of loving gentleness with which she corrects him. Keep in mind that in the philosophy of the time, there was a connection made between how children were raised and political governance. The idea that was being bandied about, are humans naturally virtuous or not? And if they're naturally virtuous, are they then to be raised up gently with a fair amount of freedoms to fulfill their promise? And is this how government should actually operate? Or here, another one of Diderot's favorite painters, Greuze, depicting the wedding arrangements of a prosperous peasant family. The word peasant doesn't mean impoverished. It means farmer. Prosperous farmers. Diderot felt that paintings about the middle class were valuable. They could show us what we would call maybe the people who are the salt of the earth, the people who are the backbone of the nation. And the idea was that middle class life was actually quite virtuous, in which people are taking care of each other. They are managing their home economies, and they are passing down the wisdom of the culture from generation to generation. You can see why, from the perspective of Diderot, this kind of Rococo decadence, which is basically softcore porn for the aristocrats, is not morally edifying. There's no moral virtue to be found in this young woman spreading her legs for the king to do what he will with her on the satin cushions. For him, a painting like this is self-indulgent, and it is not doing the proper work of painting, which is to inspire virtue in the citizens, in the human potential for freedom and self-realization.